दोस्तों, स्वागत है आपका मेरे YouTube चैनल इंग्लिश बाबू पर। और आज की क्लास में हम बात करने वाले हैं प्रोनाउंसिएशन के बारे में। तो दोस्तों, अक्सर आपने कई बार देखा होगा, काफ़ी सारे लोग इंग्लिश बोल पाते हैं और काफ़ी अच्छी इंग्लिश बोलते हैं, उनकी ग्रामर भी अच्छी होती है। लेकिन दोस्तों, कई बार सिर्फ उनकी प्रोनाउंसिएशन की वजह से उनकी इंग्लिश सुनने में अच्छी नहीं लगती है। तो दोस्तों, प्रोनाउंसिएशन का रोल काफ़ी ज़्यादा सिग्निफिकेंट है हमारी इंग्लिश स्पीकिंग में। तो आज की इस वीडियो में मैं आपके सामने एक आर्टिकल को पढ़ूंगा और मैं कोशिश करूंगा कि ज़्यादातर सभी वर्ड्स को अच्छी तरह से उनको प्रोनाउंस करूं ताकि आप उन्हें समझ सकें। और दोस्तों, चलिए अब हम इस क्लास को शुरू करते हैं। Biden might change health and education. However, she said the crisis triggered by the Russian invasion of Ukraine is not solely a European problem, as the conflict has implications for food and energy security around the world. In the context of the conflict, both the US and India support a rules based international order, even though the policies adopted by the two countries aren't necessarily always the same, she added. Asked if the US side would be prepared to be in the same room as the Russians during India's G20 presidency. In view of the deep divisions between the two sides over the Ukraine war, Jones replied, "Yeah, my colleagues see them Russia regularly in various meetings. There is not big effort to have meetings, but also the G20 is not focused on solving the Ukraine war either. That's not the goal of the G20. We should not look to that to be some kind of a magic forum for suddenly there being a discussion about peace in Ukraine that firmly believe will be done quite separately. The Ukraine crisis is being seen as one of the key challenges for India's G20 presidency, which began on December 1st, especially after the crisis almost held up a joint commissioner at the Bali summit. Diplomatic maneuver by Indian and Indonesian Indonesia helped finalize a joint statement at the last minute, though the document stated that the G20 members remain divided in their approach to the conflict. India's approach that today's era is not the war found mention in the communique. Jones said the G20 returned its core economic issues in the Bali summit after intensive discussion on Russia. There was clear willingness on the part of all participants get back to the core elements of the G20, and we understand from our Indian colleagues that India intends during its G20 presidency to really dive into the many issues that are involved in international economic business and all the things that affect people's lives, she said. One of the things the US and India agree on supporting a rules based international order. One of the hallmarks of the India US relationship is that was we are able to have discussions about issues on which we fundamentally agree, but in which the policies to get there are not necessarily always the same, she added. Jones, who worked on the last extension of NATO, said she did not share the perception that the Ukraine conflict's European war, the war Russia is waging on Ukraine, affected has affected food security with wheat shipment stuck in Ukraine and energy security, she said. The G7 The G7 plan price cap for Russia's crude is aimed to reducing as much as possible the revenues that Russia earns from its oil sales so that it can't use those revenue to increase its capacity to wage war in Ukraine, Jones said. It seems to us that it's appropriate for countries to take that into account in terms of the oil purchase that they make, but that's a sovereign decision, she said. while russia while Russia complains about NATO and its activities, Moscow's actions have only made NATO stronger, and the threat of food insecurity is a serious problem for many countries, she added. तो दोस्तों ये एक छोटा सा आर्टिकल था जो हिंदुस्तान टाइम्स में से मैंने लिया है, और इससे पढ़ने का जो मेरा मकसद था वो ये था कि इसको सही से पढ़ना और आपको सिग्निफिकेंस बताना प्रोनाउंसिएशन की। तो दोस्तों मैं उम्मीद करता हूँ आपको वीडियो पसंद आया होगा, और अगर आपको मेरा वीडियो पसंद आया हो तो इसे ज़रूर लाइक करें, शेयर करें और चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें। थैंक यू सो मच।